Orion had always believed that decency was enough. He was 22, quiet by nature, thoughtful in his words, careful with his actions. He believed in respect for elders, for family, for traditions that held people together. His father had taught him that. Character, his father used to say, is what you do when no one is watching. 2 months after saying those words for the last time, his father died. A sudden heart attack, no warning, no goodbye, just a silence that swallowed the house whole. The house itself stood on the edge of the old neighborhood, modest but sturdy. Its walls carried generations of laughter, arguments, forgiveness, and prayer. Orion had grown up there. His mother had aged there. His father had poured his entire life into it brick by brick, loan by loan, sacrifice by sacrifice. It was never just a house. It was proof of survival. After the funeral, Orion became the spine of the family. His mother moved like a shadow, grief folding her inward. His younger sister stopped speaking much at all. Orion managed paperwork, condolences, unanswered questions while quietly learning. How heavy responsibility could feel. That was when his father's elder brother stepped forward, Uncle Marcus. He arrived in expensive clothes, smelling of confidence and familiarity. He spoke softly, with practiced sympathy. "I'll handle things," Marcus said, placing a hand on Orion's shoulder. "Your father trusted me." Orion believed him. Why wouldn't he? Marcus was family. What Orion didn't know was that Marcus had always envied his younger brother. While Orion's father worked honestly, Marcus had chased shortcuts. While one built stability, the other built schemes. But Marcus smiled well, spoke cleverly, and understood how to wrap greed in kindness. In the weeks following the funeral, Marcus appeared often. He brought groceries. He offered legal help. He spoke of protecting the family. Orion listened. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. A legal notice. The house had been sold. Orion read it 3 times before the words made sense. Transferred, signed, finalized. Hands trembled. This must be a mistake, he whispered. But it wasn't. Marcus had sold the house without telling them, using forged consent papers, using old signatures, using the chaos of death. When Orion confronted him, Marcus didn't raise his voice. He smiled. "The house was in your father's name," he said calmly. "After his death, matters become complicated. I simplified them." "You sold our home," Orion said, disbelief cracking his voice. "I saved you from future trouble," Marcus replied. Property disputes ruin families. Orion realized then that the man in front of him had already rehearsed every lie. The buyers arrived. Within days, legal documents backed them. The law did not care about memories. Orion's mother collapsed. When she heard, his sister cried for the first time in weeks. And Marcus disappeared. Moved abroad, someone said. Changed numbers. Someone else said. Orion stood in the empty living room that night, surrounded by packed boxes, staring at the wall where his father had once marked his height as a child. Something inside him hardened. Not into anger, into resolve. He understood something crucial. Marcus didn't just steal a house. He stole security. He stole dignity. He stole grief's last refuge, and people like Marcus didn't fear confrontation. They feared exposure. Orion wiped his eyes, straightened his back, and made a silent promise to the walls that had raised him. "I won't destroy him," he said softly. "I'll undo him." And that was the night Orion stopped being just a decent, sensible boy and began becoming something far more dangerous to a clever, mean man who thought he'd won. Orion did not chase Marcus. That was the first decision that surprised even himself. Every instinct screamed to confront, to shout, to drag the truth into the open. But Orion remembered, his father's voice. Character is what you do when no one is watching. Rage would only entertain Marcus. Desperation would only feed him, so Orion chose patience. The family moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of the city. It was cramped and unfamiliar, but Orion treated it like a temporary station, not a defeat. Every morning he awoke before sunrise, made tea for his mother, walked his sister to college, and then sat with a notebook he had started calling the record. Inside it, he wrote only facts. Dates, names, documents, contradictions, he requested. Copies of property papers from the registrar's office. He studied signatures, his father's real ones, and the ones Marcus had used. He learned how forged consent slipped through cracks when grief distracted families. At night, he read about property law. Not casually, obsessional-level reading. He learned about benemy transactions, about misuse of power of attorney, about how elder relatives exploited legal gray zones. He learned something else. 2 cases like his were common. And most victims gave up. That realization changed something in him. Orion enrolled in an evening certification course in legal documentation and compliance. During the day, he worked at a small accounting firm, quietly absorbing how money moved, how deals were disguised, how clever men hid behind paperwork. Meanwhile, Marcus resurfaced digitally. Photos from abroad, new business announcements, motivational quotes about hard choices. Orion studied every post. Marcus had not run away. He had expanded. He had used the money from the house as seed capital. Orion confirmed it through transaction trails and indirect links. Marcus believed distance made him untouchable, but distance also created gaps. 6 months passed, then a year during that time. Orion never contacted Marcus. Instead, he contacted people Marcus had wronged. Former partners, disgruntled employees, one distant cousin whose land had mysteriously changed ownership. Years earlier, patterns emerged. Marcus didn't steal violently. He stole politely. He used trust. He used timing. He used silence. Orion began compiling affidavits, not accusations, but statements. No drama, just truth. Written carefully and signed. His mother noticed the change in him one evening. "You're very quiet these days," she said. Orion smiled gently. "I'm learning to listen." 2 years after his father's death, Orion made his first visible move. He filed a civil notice, not against Marcus, against a sale. The notice challenged the legality of the transaction based on forged consent and lack of legal heir's approval. It didn't accuse Marcus by name. It asked a question the system couldn't ignore. Within weeks, the buyers, respectable, cautious people, became uneasy. Banks paused their loan approvals. The property's resale value froze. Marcus noticed that. He called Orion for the first time in years. "Why are you creating trouble?" Marcus asked lightly. "You should be grateful I handled things." Orion's voice was calm. "I'm not creating trouble," he said. "I'm documenting it." Silence stretched. "You don't understand how the world works," Marcus said finally. Orion smiled, though Marcus couldn't see it. "I'm beginning to," he replied. That night, Orion added a new line to the record. Marcus made contact. Pressure detected. It was the first sign. The clever man was no longer comfortable, and Orion knew then, without doubt, that revenge would not come as a single moment. It would come as a collapse. Slow, legal, unavoidable. Marcus had always believed he was smarter than consequences. For years he had lived comfortably inside that belief. He trusted his charm, his contacts, and his ability to stay one step ahead of the law. Orion's civil notice unsettled him, not because it was aggressive, but because it was precise. Precision frightened clever men. Marcus hired lawyers immediately. Expensive ones. They reviewed the notice and assured him the case would drag on for years. "Time is on your side," they said. Marcus smiled again, but time was also Orion's weapon. Orion anticipated the delay. He used it. While the case crawled forward, he widened the frame. He submitted information requests to land registries linked to Marcus's past. He cross-referenced sale dates with Marcus's travel records. He noticed something crucial. Marcus had sold Orion's house before legally inheriting authority. That mistake sat quietly in the paperwork, like a ticking clock. Meanwhile, Marcus grew careless. The freeze on the property meant his overseas ventures struggled. Cash flow tightened. He started leaning on old contacts, calling in favors, reusing methods that had worked before. One of those calls was recorded. A former associate, someone Marcus had cheated years earlier, kept the recording. Orion found him not by chasing Marcus, but by listening to rumors. The recording was calm, polite. Marcus discussing arranging signatures. No threats, no shouting. Just incriminating clarity. Orion didn't rush. He verified it legally. He ensured consent. He preserved chain of custody. Every step cleaned out at home. His sister noticed the shift. "You're different," she said one evening. "You don't look angry anymore." Orion nodded. "Anger wants to win. I want the truth to stand." The court date finally arrived. Marcus walked in confidently, dressed impeccably, smiling at acquaintances. Orion sat quietly behind his lawyer, notebook in hand. When the forged consent papers were examined side by side with his father's verified signatures, the room shifted. When the timeline was questioned, death transfer, sale, the judge leaned forward. When Orion's lawyer submitted affidavits from other victims, showing a pattern of manipulation, Marcus's smile faded. Then came the recording. Marcus objected. The judge allowed it. The room heard his voice, casual, certain, guilty. Marcus spoke for the first time, not to charm, but to defend. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "But misunderstandings don't repeat. Patterns do." The court ordered a deeper investigation, not just into the sale, but into Marcus's past dealings. His assets were provisionally frozen. Travel restrictions were imposed. Marcus's world began to close in. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. "Do you regret selling your brother's house?" one asked. Marcus did not answer. That night he called Orion again. "This is getting ugly," Marcus said. "We're family. We can settle." Orion's reply was steady. "You settled when you sold our home without telling us." Silence. In that silence, Marcus understood something he had never faced before. This boy, this quiet, decent nephew was not emotional. He was relentless, and for the first time in his life, Marcus felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Marcus's fear did not make him wiser. It made him desperate. Desperate men abandoned subtlety, and Marcus had survived his entire life on subtlety. When his accounts froze and his travel privileges vanished, he felt the walls closing in. The world that once welcomed him with handshakes now spoke in notices and summons. For the first time, Marcus was being treated the way he had treated others. That is a problem. The investigation expanded quietly but thoroughly. Authorities uncovered irregularities that had been buried for years, land transfers that never quite made sense, signatures that looked right until they were examined closely, relatives who had been pressured into silence. Marcus's lawyers advised him to settle quickly. Return the money, they said. Withdraw. Minimize damage. Marcus laughed bitterly. If I return one thing, everything falls apart. He was right, so he chose denial. The court proceedings stretched on, but the momentum had shifted. The buyers of Orion's house, angry and embarrassed, filed their own case against Marcus. Banks demanded explanations. Business partners cut ties overnight. The clever man who once moved invisibly was now painfully visible. Orion watched all of this from a distance. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He focused on one thing only, restoration. Not just of property, of truth. During the final hearing, Orion was asked to speak. The judge looked at him kindly. You may address the court. Orion stood. My father built that house with honest labor, he said. When he died, we lost him. But when the house was sold without our knowledge, we lost our safety, our dignity, and our right to grieve in peace. He paused. This case is not about property, Orion continued. It's about trust, and how easily it can be weaponized. The courtroom was silent. The verdict followed weeks later. The sale was declared illegal. The property was ordered to be returned to its rightful heirs. Marcus was found guilty of fraud, forgery, and abuse of trust. His sentence was not dramatic, it was exact. Financial restitution, permanent criminal record, public disclosure of offenses. The most painful punishment for a man like Marcus. His reputation collapsed completely the day Orion received the final papers. He went alone to the old house. The door creaked when he opened it. Dust hung in the air. The rooms were emptier than memory, but still familiar. He stood where his father once stood and closed his eyes. We're home, he whispered. His mother cried when she stepped inside again. His sister laughed through tears. The house did not look the same, but it felt right. Marcus, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. No speeches, no second chances. Clever men survive on shadows and, once exposed, they have nowhere to hide. Months later, Orion received a letter from Marcus. 2 sentences. I underestimated you. I thought decency was weakness. Orion folded the letter and placed it in the record, then closed the notebook. For the last time, decency had not been weakness. It had been discipline. And discipline had won. On the wall of the restored house, Orion hung a small frame. Inside it were his father's words, written in his own hand. Character is what you do when no one is watching. Orion lived by that. And that was his revenge. Not destruction, not cruelty, but the quiet, irreversible defeat of a mean, clever man by truth, patience, and integrity.